This is Dr. Karmen Smith, or Galactic Shaman, and I'd like to talk to you today about cognitive distortions. And a lot of people are having difficulty talking with people that have different views, and they're trying to debate issues, and they're trying to get people to come over to their side, and they're trying to convince people that they're wrong or that they're right. And let me tell you, you can't do anything when someone has a cognitive distortion. Let's go deep. So let's talk specifically about the cognitive distortions, meaning that the ideas and the way that you're presenting the ideas just are not part of any type of intellectual debate. As a matter of fact, it goes off the rails really quick. And I wanted to give you 4 examples of that. The first one is what I call the switch. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and you want to talk specifics about specific things, and you say, what about that Capitol storming, that coup attempt, that violent takeover that almost happened at the Capitol? And then someone says, well, what about the BLM? And then they bring up something totally different that is not what you brought up. It's almost like saying, can we talk about War and Peace? And then the other person says, yeah, but what about Far Side and those cartoons? This is called the switch, where that person won't even come near the topic that you were bringing up. They want to go all the way to another topic altogether, and they will never go back to that other topic that you brought up. And so they're not even talking or on the same page as you. So this is an intentional technique of cognitive distortion, where you want to talk about a specific thing, want to focus on a specific thing, and they switch it all together to a totally different subject that really has very few things in common with the first. So this is an example of what you'll see when you're encountering someone with cognitive distortion. The other thing is where a person will slander you personally and do a personal attack. So you might say, let's talk about that coup attempt, that violent thing at the Capitol. And you want to get into that specific topic. Meanwhile, that person says, well, you're an intelligent person. I know that you don't believe that that was a so-and-so. So what are they doing? They just labeled you unintelligent, or they just shamed you, or they just labeled you an insurrectionist yourself, or something like that. In other words, they've taken that topic that you wanted to go into, and they've made it a personal attack. And you will see this with people that have cognitive distortions. They know that they can't really talk to you about any kind of facts. They can't go into history about whatever you're talking about. They don't have any statistics about what you're talking about. They may not even have any personal feelings that they want to discuss about it. So instead, they will make a personal attack so that you will stop talking about it altogether. Now, I have a personal experience with this because I wanted to put out into the next door community, which is an email community that goes out into my neighborhood. And I wanted to talk to them and have an open conversation about race. And when people started to come together and start talking about it, there were a couple of trolls or a couple of people that wanted to get in there and hate on people, and they started to mock them, or they started to make fun of them, or have derogatory things that they wanted to say about them, making them a personal target. And so as people began to get fearful, they stopped communicating. So this is a way to shut down a conversation by inducing fear, shame, and guilt. And most people are people pleasers, and they're really afraid of criticism and judgment, so they will cease. This is a technique that people use to shut it all down. And so in order to move forward in this brave, new, wonderful world we want to create, we have to be brave and we have to be loving at the same time. There's another technique that I've seen used a lot. And this is where someone will create some false or even some outlandish information, and then they ask you about it. So for example, with the vote, they'll say, "Do you know how many dead people voted in Virginia?" And you'll be like, "Well, no." And they'll go, See, you don't know either. Well, why don't you know? Because it was rigged. And they'll come up with something so outlandish that you feel like you're on a Saturday Night Live skit, when actually that person really, really believes that dead people walked in and voted. So this is something that you'll see a lot with cognitive distortion. False, outlandish information. And because you don't buy into it, you're labeled wrong, or they feel like they won the argument. You'll see that. There's another technique, and the last technique that I want to talk about is the victim technique. This is where you've done something outlandishly inappropriate, outlandishly wrong, outlandishly even probably illegal. But if you present yourself as a victim, like, everybody's out to get me, or maybe you'll have your arm in a sling or in a wheelchair, whatever it is, you want to portray yourself as a victim. This is a technique that is used mostly by sociopaths, meaning people without empathy. And it's targeted to people that have empathy in the audience, so that, they'll feel sorry for me. I can manipulate their emotions if I appeal to their victimization of me. So if I portray myself as a victim, I can get people in the audience who have empathy to empathize with me and not pass judgment, meaning not give me consequences. So you're going to see, and you have already, I'm sure, you might have people in your family that you've tried to debate politics or some other thing with, and you run up against these 4 techniques that are used, and it's basically a cognitive distortion. The first one was switch, where you want to talk about one subject, but they switch it to a totally different one and don't want to come back to the other one. The second one is slander, where they just shame you, you're the bad person, you're not good enough. The other one is where they do false information, outlandish information, and because you don't know it or don't buy into it, you're the one that's wrong. And the last one is the victimization. That's where I can portray myself as a victim, even though I've done some outlandishly wrong things, because I'm a sociopath, I don't have any empathy. And my target audience are the people with empathy. And if I can manipulate those people, well, then I don't have to face any consequences. So when you see these techniques, I want you to know you're not going crazy. They're just techniques that shut down a conversation. We still need to create the world that we want. But when you run up against these techniques, just know it's not an argument you want to get into, and it's not about winning or losing. It's just about communicating that we want to create a world that works for everybody. And if you can't communicate that with someone that has cognitive distortions, then go visualize and create with like-minded people. And that's how we're going to create this loving world. We can all do that. You know why? Because we're all galactic shamans.